All right, we are live, and I'm very excited to introduce you all to today's guest. On today's episode, I interview a community leader, a husband, a father of four, and lead pastor at Anchor Point Church in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Welcome to the Winner Circle, Donavan Friesen.
Hey, Derek, good to be here with you. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, absolutely. We went for a walk a couple of weeks ago, and I had a really great time getting to hear a bit of your story, and I'm excited to delve more into it in this conversation. The goal of these conversations is to really uplift, inspire, and empower everyone listening in to move forward with greater faith and belief in themselves on their hero's journey ahead. And I'm excited to explore your hero's journey. The first question, it's a really positive one, and that is just what do you love about your world right now, Donovan? Not what do you love about the external world, but what do you love about your personal world right now?
Oh man, good question, Derek. So first off, I haven't had these questions ahead of time, so it'll be on the fly, which is really good. I like it. It's really authentic. What I love about the world that I'm in right now is when you've kind of navigated through some of the challenges or difficulties or areas in your life where you have insecurities or fears, but you land in a place that like you believe you have a call towards. It's a place that you wake up each day and you're excited for the work that you're doing, and you begin to see some good, let's say, fruit in the work that you're doing. It's very highly motivating. And so right now, probably one of the best stages or phases that I've been in my life journey to this day. So yeah, every day it's pretty easy to get up and get going and be motivated for the things that are ahead.
So, for those that don't know you, can you explain to us what is the work that you're doing?
Okay, so I'm a pastor. So that means I have been given the responsibility or the care of a local congregation of people here in Winnipeg. So the primary thing is how do I help people to grow in maturity in all areas of their life. So this is not just spiritual, but physical and emotional, and the spiritual. How do we work together towards helping that end? So this includes counsel. This includes helping people to see maybe where the Lord has taken them. This is to deal with maybe strongholds or struggles or sin in one's life. This is helping to ask questions, into digging into one's life to find out what are maybe the shortcomings, or and then helping people to know God. Ultimately, that's my greatest dream and desire. I want people to actually know the true God, to be able to have a relationship with him and encounter him and know a God that is loving, a God that is kind, a God that has our best interest in mind, and help to walk people towards that end. So yeah, there's lots and lots of facets of it. So some is like preparing and training other pastors to be sent, lots of time studying the Bible and people who do work in that area, lots of conversations with people. It includes I do a lot of weddings. I think I've done 24, 25 weddings this year. We do funerals and hospital visitations, and we just look wherever there's a need to give care. We want to give care to help people in these areas of their life.
Beautiful. So you mentioned the true God. From your understanding, who is that true God? What is that true God?
Yeah, so I believe that Jesus is the true God, and he in the word says that he's the way and the truth and the life. And I think there are many gods, we could say, that are out there. Jesus doesn't give an allowance really for there to be like thousands of different gods to choose from what it looks like. I think people in general are looking for like who created the world? How does it exist? Does it stay in motion today? Where is the beginning? What's going to happen in the end? And so I believe there's one true God. I believe it's Jesus as part of a triune God, which is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And they are working together. This is the creator. This is the one who, yeah, created everything that we see and know in the galaxies in the universe and this world that we're in, and is engaged in a personal walk with us as well. So I think there's lots of people who they have a variety of things that they look for, or a variety like looking for something outside of themselves to give clarity or answers or something along those lines. And I think when people are searching for truth, the journey can take them on a variety of different paths. But what we find, or I often find, is that they meet and encounter the one who created the world and the galaxy and created us. And so that's the probably the simplest definition that I can give in a moment.
And you share these teachings and this message at your church, Anchor Point Church in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Um, Can you kind of describe what that church is all about and what differentiates you from other churches, and maybe what's the denomination? That people might wonder that as well.
Yeah. So we're not connected to a denomination. So we're independent in some regards. But what I think some of the things that differentiate is we didn't just want to be with a denomination, although we're happy to be, but we're connected with many churches working together to fulfill kind of that end. So we do lots of partnership, lots of working together and saying, how do we be like one, we'll say in Christian terms, we say body of Christ or one church or one people, all fulfilling the same mission, which is what God has asked us to do. And so we want earth to be a lot more like heaven. So how do we help do that and bring the kingdom of heaven into the earth that we're in right now? So we are a church. We're filled with lots of ages, but we have a huge young person demographic in the church. We want to not just come and learn, we want to participate. We want to put the things that we're learning from the Bible into action in our lives. We want to truly impact a community and maybe change a culture to make the culture again more like heaven. So we're in the Fort Garry area of Winnipeg, and so you've been in the church lots, and there's a map on the wall, and we say this is Winnipeg is a big city. It's a big area. How do you reach 800,000 people, or how do you help 800,000? So we said, let's narrow it. Let's get it down to like 15, 20,000 people in the Fort Garry area. And can we help with the needs that are there, from widows to even those that maybe we say are orphaned or in CFS or don't have good homes that they're a part of? How do we help there? How do we help in the schools and the things that are happening there? How do we infiltrate into how do we integrate, I mean, ourselves into a community to help bring care, to bring love, and to help people know God? So the differentiator, I'm not sure if there's a differentiator, except we say, well, we're looking at the Bible and saying we want to live it like the Bible. We don't want to live it like the tradition of what maybe church has brought in, which is lots of cultural things. We're like, no, no. What does the Bible say? We believe it's God's word. And so we believe God knows best and he is Lord over all. So if we can learn his way, put that into practice, we think it's going to be glorious on the other side. And so that's, I think, the fruit or the byproduct of what we're seeing. Maybe one of the things as well that would maybe differentiate a little bit is often I think has been used in religious contexts, including in the church. Fear of like, if you do this, then this, and if you explore this, then this, and don't do this, and be careful of this, and stop on this. And we put like rules and parameters often in place, and we kind of bind people often by fear. And so what we're saying in our church is we want there to be such unity and care for each other that we can explore things that we can explore ideas without like getting freaked out by it. So one story that maybe helps to illustrate it is there's a lady that came to visit me, and she had talked to many pastors, and she came into my office and she was like, Donavan, I believe aliens are real. So I'm like, whoa, fascinating. Tell me about it. Help me understand. Like, what have you learned and what have you discovered? And I want to know, like, if there's aliens, I'd like to know. What have you figured out? And she begins to tell me the things that she's discovered and learned. And do I think there's aliens? Like, I don't personally think there's aliens, but I don't think aliens or life on other planets like removes the existence of God. If there's life on other planets, I want to know about it. So anyway, we listen, we dialogue, we talk. She's telling me about aliens. And at the end, she's like, every time I've talked to a minister, they always tell me in some form that I'm crazy, like, this is dumb. Why are you wasting your time? But you're like the first one that like allowed me to explore it. And I just really appreciate that I could explore it. At the end, I don't need to be the arbiter of all truth, but I want to explore and dig to find out what is true. And so that's what we attempt to do. How do we discover and search for what's true and not lose our wonder in who God is and exploring to know him?
I really appreciate that. I'm newer to the church, and I've spent time studying many other teachings and philosophies, and you've only been open to discussing those with me as I just kind of familiarize myself more with the teachings of Jesus, which I learned when I was younger. I
Yeah.
would describe your church like the energy is unlike any other energy I've ever been around. Not only religious groups, but just groups in general, whether that be um, trainings I've attended or communities I've attended. I feel the community you've cultivated at Anchor Point is very open,
Yeah.
very genuine, welcoming, kind, and very friendly. How will you describe your community?
Yeah. And we hear this lots, and often people still get lost in the shuffle. There's lots of people that come. It's a growing and in some regards thriving church. But when I read scripture, I see that the love that they had for each other was so deep. And I felt like a lot of places in my life in church, it wasn't as deep as what I thought it should be. It felt
Mhm.
like it was like a facade of sorts. It was niceties, but it wasn't like we loved each other. We could share the all the junk in our lives as well. It felt like we couldn't do that. So we've just worked really hard to say, how do we teach people to really love each other? And so this is one of the hardest things because we're like, it's volunteers. Like people, we don't pay people to come to the church. Like people choose to come and then they're to encounter something. So I read in the Bible that the love that when people who are not believers of Jesus come into your midst, they should see the love that you have for each other, and that should cause them to glorify God in heaven, like to look and say, "Whoa, I want to be a part of like a community like that with a depth of love. Why do you love each other this way?" And we love each other that way because of Christ's love for us. So we've really worked on that front. So we do weekend retreats where sometimes joke it's like sort of like speed relationships. Like we get into groups and I want you to meet new people and I want you to discuss this. And can you go to a new group and work on this? And now share something that's a bit vulnerable. And then how do we come over here and how do we listen well to each other? And then how do we engage back in? Really trying to work on how do you have authentic, real relationship. Then when you come to church, it's not just to get, it's to you're trying to come and like love the people that are there, to care for the people, looking for someone sitting alone and trying to cultivate this love that is really deep. So I would say yes, this is the culture that we've really worked hard to teach and train and practice is to be kind, to be open, to be loving, to be willing to help and walk together. And so I like it that you say that that's what you've encountered there.
Yeah, it's absolutely working.
Yeah,
And
that's awesome.
it starts with leading by example, and you as the head pastor, you unquestionably lead by example.
Thank
Um, I'm curious to hear your mission, your personal mission, not only your mission at the church, but your mission in all that you do, whether that's your community work, as a husband, a father, and as a lead pastor. What is your overarching mission that guides you in all your being?
Extraordinary care is the first thing. Like love others as you want to be loved or you want to be cared for. So to give extraordinary care. So that's like one, but it's extraordinary care to people, helping walk with people towards maturity. I think early on, I spent a lot of time with people that weren't hungry. They just wanted someone that they could spill everything onto, not wanting to grow, just someone to kind of vomit on. And I'm okay with that for a little bit, but it's pretty unfulfilling. So the personal side is like, no, I want to love people, but not love people just like in a false type of love. I want to love people, which is helping them like to grow and to becoming someone that's like a contributing member that loves God, that's whole in character. So it's not just like, oh, I'm gonna tell Derek that, oh, you're really awesome, you're really kind, like, oh, you're really wonderful, and then we just walk away and it's niceties. I want to sort through and be like, okay, what is maybe like, how can I help Derek, or where can I encourage him, or what are the gifts that he has, and see if we can keep moving people in a direction towards what I might call maturity. And then the goal for me is I think this is the lack in the church as a whole in Canada, perhaps. And so we want to, I think the call for me is to raise up as many mature followers of Jesus as possible to go and give extraordinary care into as many regions across the country as possible.
Mm, that is incredible. Love, you mentioned the word love. That's a big word. What does that word mean to you? Love.
Yeah. Man, it's a good question. So I probably have a personal definition, but I'll start with scripture just because it's the part that governs everything for me. So in the Bible, it talks about what love is. Love is patient, love is kind, it doesn't envy, it doesn't boast, it doesn't keep a record of wrong, it rejoices in the things that are true. Um, it says in the Bible that the fruit or the characteristics of someone who's living wholehearted for God is like love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and faithfulness and gentleness and self-control. And so I look at all of these things, I say, okay, so in relationships, I'm not just looking to be nice, but I'm not keeping a record of wrong, but I'm like looking for things that are good. I'm trying to find things to rejoice in the goods that are going on. I'm not coming and meeting with Derek and being like, when I meet with you, I'm not having a critical eye to say you're wrong here and stop and why do you believe this? No, 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 no. I'm coming not with a record of wrong, not I'm coming to like demonstrate to you, to love you, to hear you, that you're valued as a person, that you feel like joy or that our time together is one that's enriching for you. And I think when it becomes mutual, so my love for you doesn't require you to love me. I think where like deep friendship comes in is when I can express love and care to you and you reciprocate love and care back. Then I think you can have like such deep bond, and then together you can make the world better. Together you can grow to know Christ. Together you can give care to those in the community or those in your workplace, and I think that strengthens. So for me, that would be how I see and or express it. And then I think the adverse side is like lust, and I don't just mean lust as in sexual lust. I mean there's all sorts of things that like are sort of loving, but maybe they're a little bit more like selfish. Like, no, no, no. Like I gave you, Derek, I gave you all this money to help you. But in the back of my mind, I'm like giving you money because I'm hoping that later in return, you now owe me. So I don't want to be indebted, but I want you to be indebted to me. That's selfish. It looks loving because I'm being generous, but it's selfish. It's selfishness. So it's not actually love. It's like it's lustful, it's self-indulging, it's self-preservation. So I think loving is being transparent and honest without any expectation of return. It's to give care and to bring joy without any expectation of return.
Uh-huh. From what you've seen and learned so far, what gets in the way of people loving one another?
Uh, I think there's probably a bunch. Trying to think on my feet here a little bit. I think hurt from the past. So I think if you've become vulnerable to someone and then they take advantage of you and hurt you, I think that limits people from giving and receiving love. I think self-hatred, where you just like sometimes the way psychology might describe it, and I think we talked about this a little bit, is if you imagine three chairs, and the chairs on either side are like low self-esteem, but like the middle chair is like good self-esteem. So this side, it's tearing others down and building yourself up. And this side is building others up, but tearing yourself down. And the middle chair is like knowing what's good about you and what you're strong in and knowing what you're weak in and looking at other people and knowing where they're strong and knowing where they're weak, but it's not offensive. It's not chaotic. So I think insecurity, I think fear is a massive thing that keeps people bound. Like afraid of failing, afraid of what people think, yeah, afraid of losing reputation, afraid of being wrong. I think these are some of the things that would cause people from it. But then I hear like, so then in my office, I'll often have people express and say, "Oh, I've never told anyone that before," and I'm like, "Oh, it's okay." I'm like, "How come like we've never met before? How come you expressed it?" It's like I don't know. It felt like safe. It felt like I could, and I think that's one of the ways that we can tear down these inhibitions or fears of people so that they can become healed. Is to be a good listener, to care, to engage with them, and definitely not to blow the trust by yeah, by going and speaking ill or going and gossiping behind people's backs.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I'm excited to delve into a few of those barriers to love. One you mentioned is hurt from the past. And we've all been hurt in our lifetimes, and I'm sure you've also been hurt. How have you healed your hurt, Donovan?
Oh, Derek, that's the million-dollar question. I think so. For me, one of the main areas or ways in which I've dealt with personal hurt is I actually come and I sit with God and I say, God, can you help me understand? Sometimes what that looks like is I'll just close my eyes and I'll go back into the memory that I had where the hurt was. And I say, Jesus, right now, like I'm really hurt in this situation. Like I'm not sure how to get past it. This person really harmed me. Like, where were you? How could you allow this to happen? Can you show me where you were? Can you help me to get your perspective? And when I stop and not try to self-medicate, not try to like run away from the pain, not try to um, like distract myself by like just watching videos or I don't know, playing video games on my phone and trying to ignore it. Rather sit in it and say, Jesus, can you help me understand? I've had some pretty significant hurt that someone shouldn't go through. I won't get into the details of it, but I've had some really significant hurt, very violating. And when I sat with the Lord, I felt the Lord, his spirit speak inside. It's like, Donovan, like, did you now take this and what happened to you? Did you go and hurt other people? I felt this in my inner person. I'm like, no, I haven't taken advantage of others. And then he just helped me see that this was generations of pain that had been passed on from generation to generation to generation. And it came to me. And the Lord's like, Donovan, thank you that you would have ended the destructive train that's like hurt so many generations. And this comes because you would just trust me and allow me to heal you. I was like, and that revelation in this one area, that revelation was like, oh God, like I never saw it like that. I never saw it as like pain through generations that have been passed on, but I needed his clarity. And he was like, thank you that it ended. Donovan, I'm going to heal your heart. You got to trust me on this. So I'm going to heal your heart. And the person that violated me in my situation, Jesus invited me to go and make amends with this person. And this person is one of my dearest friends today. And it was like a deep, deep pain. Now, I don't think everyone needs to go and do that. I don't think forgiveness means that you have to enter into a relationship again that's close because trust can be really painful or is different than forgiveness. But these would be some of the things. How do you walk to forgiveness? How do you ask for Jesus to like mend your heart and heal it or allow God to do a working inside of you? And I think these are some of the ways in which to walk through healing. I think like for me, I've had to go talk with some people like where I'm like, I can't navigate through, I can't see. And I will invite someone instead of me just vomiting on you and saying, this is what everyone did to me, rather to come and say, like, if you're someone that I would trust to speak in my life, I'd say, like, Derek, like something happened to me and I just can't get through this thing. And I want you to speak truth into me that is beyond my emotions or my chaos. Can you help me see it differently? And if I can move into empathy, if I can move into understanding, if I can get God's heart, if I can have someone help me to see a different side, that can be really helpful for me.
Seeking help is a real strength, and I'm
Yeah.
glad you're able to do that. Another barrier for fear that you meant for love that you mentioned is fear. What have you learned about fear, and what does your relationship with fear look like today?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fears that we maybe don't identify. I had fears that I didn't identify. So I love playing music. I play guitar, and in our church context, we have worship, which is like songs that we sing corporately together to glorify God. And I remember like I would play all the instruments, but I never wanted to sing because I was afraid that my voice was terrible. And I had heard my whole life, Donovan, you have such a unique voice. So I was like, okay, I'll just never sing public. I'll sing in a choir, but I would never sing solo because I had a unique voice, which I took as like it's terrible, right? Like, so one day at church, this is years and years ago, and I had this fear. I just never wanted to like to sing into a microphone because that was terrifying. And I had this fear and it bound me. And so we're about to play and we're practicing in the morning before church started. And also the person that was supposed to lead all the songs called us. We were ready at the church, like, I'm sick. I have no voice. I can't lead. And they're like, Donavan, you're going to have to lead. And I'm like, not a chance. No way. I'm not singing into the microphone. And so they're like, Donavan, there's no one else. You have to. Right. And I'm like, oh no. So I went outside in the parking lot and I just wept. I was like, God, I can't. Like, I can't do it. And then again, this voice inside, the spirit speaking, he's like, what's the worst case? So you lead and it's terrible and no one ever asks you to lead again. You're still in the same spot you are right now. Or you lead and it's not terrible and people want, like, they ask you or you can continue and you find out there's a gift there, but don't allow fear to block it. And so I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe it. So I went in, pulled out my guitar, the band is there, people come into the church, and I just like closed my eyes and I said, okay, Jesus, like, I'll do it, I'm in, I'll just lead it. And I just closed my eyes and I put my attention on him and I just forgot about the fear of the people and I just sang. And when I opened my eyes, there's people all over there just weeping as they are meeting God. I was like, and on that day, I just got started to get asked to lead worship everywhere. And I was like, oh man, like, God, I would never have done this if you wouldn't have like pushed me through preaching. I didn't like preaching. Weird, as a pastor, I preach all the time and I like didn't like preaching. I was like, God, like, people are going to get tired of my message because I kind of have one message and I keep coming back to him. And so, and he's like, Donavan, I'm not asking you to preach for them. I'm asking you, like, would you be faithful to me? Sorry about the noise in the background there. I don't know if you can hear it. So I hear fear. I think I sometimes see fear like this. If fear blocks your vision and you can't see, then it's incapacitating. And then you can't grow and heal and those types of things. But I think what I like to help people do is have their fear that's here, but then like help them just open up the fear that they can see a little bit past the fear and come and let me help you walk through. So I'll give you one more example. So I have a dear friend of mine who we spent lots of time together. We'd pray together. He was a pastor. And one day he was sharing with me that he had fear. And his fear, his deepest fear as a dad, he never played any sports. He didn't have a good relationship with his dad. His son was playing on a baseball team. And he says, Donavan, my greatest fear is I'm going to go to a practice and the coach is going to ask all the dads or all the parents to come on the field and to help with the practice. I can't throw a ball. I can't catch a ball. I'm terrified. And I don't even want to show up. I just want to drop my kid off, but I need to be there. Like, I just need you to pray for me and help me. And I said, actually, would you trust me to help teach you how to throw a ball and catch a ball? He's like, there's not one other person, but you've earned my trust. I would let you teach me. So we went off probably 1 or 2 days later. And like the most basic things, I was a phys ed major. That's what I gave my life to. I played sports my whole life. And so at first, like, we were maybe, I don't know, 15 feet apart, and he couldn't throw a ball as a grown man 15 feet. He had no idea because he was so terrified his whole life. And all of a sudden, I just taught him, like, opposite foot forward, pull the ball back, throw it. And all of a sudden, he ripped the ball, like, from like couldn't throw it 15 to like threw it like 30 or 40 feet, taught him to catch. And it was like 20 minutes of our lives. And all of a sudden, he could throw and catch a ball. And he was like, I can't believe it. I've lived in this fear where I've avoided anything that looks like a sport because I'm terrified of what people think. And I know that I'm not going to be good at it. And so he learned, he's like, I can't believe it. I'm going to love throwing a ball around. And it was the next weekend or the next practice that the coach called everyone, all the parents, to come on the field. And it turns out there's all sorts of parents who had no idea the basics of throwing and catching a ball. And so here he is. He learned it a day or two earlier. Now he's coaching or teaching parents and kids the technique of it. But fear was like this for him. And just being willing to have enough trust. I could say, come, would you trust me? I won't make fun of you. I'll help you. Let's work it through. That trust relationship or this love that we could have for each other allowed the fear to open up, that he could see past it. And all of a sudden it was like this fear was like nothing for him. And so that's the relationship with fear. I think there's, when you can talk it through, when you can work it with someone that you've trusted, willing to take a risk, it's I think that's a way that we can deal with fear. But I see the problem is that we don't have many people that we can fully trust with our lives. So we won't risk to reveal some of the deepest fears that we have. We won't risk sharing our deepest insecurities, or we won't risk sharing our deepest failures with someone because we're afraid of being judged or taken advantage of. But if we can have more and more people that are really trustworthy and really loving, then we can change the narrative where you can share everything about your life to me, and I won't love you less. I'll love you more because you're more fully known, and vice versa. But I think in our culture, what we've done is like, if you've done some really bad things, let's say you've murdered someone. As long as I don't know that you murdered someone, we can be good friends. But if you tell me that you did, now we can't be. That's weird. Like that. No, no, like if I love you and we're together and then you reveal something deep, it's like, oh, thank you that you would entrust me with this secret of this pain. Let's walk to healing together. That's a very different approach than a judgment where you share something and then I take advantage of you or someone takes advantage of you. So those are some of the things around the area of fear that I think I've navigated through.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Um, One last barrier to love that you mentioned, and I think it relates with fear, and that's being afraid of failing. We talked about the fear of what others will think, but there's also the fear of failing that gets in the way of a lot of people, not only for love, but from accomplishing goals, dreams, and just kind of going beyond their known world and just trying like what their heart is guiding them towards, kind of stepping outside their comfort zone. And it's that fear of failing. What have you learned about that type of fear?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the fear of failure, it's well, you've probably experienced it in your life. I have too,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely, absolutely. It's like a barrier for me to a lot of things.
Yeah. So I think sometimes maybe what happens is we have sort of two narratives. Don't do anything, or in terms of fear of failure. So don't do anything, or your fear of failing, but you're just looking like 100 steps ahead. It's like, I'm gonna change the world. I'm gonna become like a worldwide sensation in teaching yoga to everyone. It's like you're going to dream way to the stars. That's pretty unrealistic. Or I'm going to do nothing. And there's this middle ground that I think is there, which is like if there's a dream or there's a desire or there's something I'll say to contribute to the world that you think is going to be a benefit. I think maybe something to do when people have fear of failure is like, can I take one or two steps in a direction? Can I talk with one or two people to move me towards a direction, not 100 miles here? And there's a principle in scripture that says, if you can be faithful with little, then you can be trusted to be faithful with much. But I think people either have faithful with nothing or not faithful at all, so nothing, or they want to be faithful with something massive, and this over here, I think, is more pride than anything. But rather here, it's okay, what amount would you do? So let's say, what would be an example? So I want to help train up people to plant churches across the country that are healthy churches in loving communities. Well, let's say I have a dream of like, I want to plant 1,000 churches. I'm like, oh man, now I got to raise up 1,000 teams of people to be sent. I'm like, man, how am I going to find like tens of thousands of people to train to send? Like, that's not going to work. I'm like, I stop it all. God, I'd love to be able to plant as many because my heart is for this nation. But God, where do I start? And it's like, can you find three people that like really love God and want to grow that you have a good bond with? And can you help three people to begin and give their whole lives to like build the kingdom and to love people and do it what we're talking about? That's taking something that's way out there and bringing it here. Can you be faithful with these ones? Get rid of your own ego, get it out of the way because your ego can just about kill you. Move that out of the way. And can you be faithful to three? And if you're faithful to three, then maybe you can be faithful with 10. Then you can be faithful with 30. And then the dream can go and you're building credibility as you go. So doing yoga as an example of a path that you've been on. It's like, I have a dream of being a yoga instructor, but you've never taught anybody yoga. In fact, you decide, okay, I'm gonna open up a class. I'm gonna do it in my garage, and I'm gonna buy some mats. And then five people come and they all hate it. You can beat yourself up, be like, I suck, I'm no good, I could never. But actually, if it's a dream or a call or you believe in it, then all of a sudden you put a pause and say, okay, I got some maybe personal issues that I need to sort through. I offend everyone. I I cause people, like, I rub them the wrong way. I need to adjust something. What do I need to adjust? Then I would look and say, okay, who's somebody who's like really good with people that people are attracted to? And I would call them up and be like, can I get 10 minutes of your time? And I'd like it if you could answer this question for me. Like, what are three things that are non-negotiables for influencing people and giving great care to them? Because I'm not good at it. And you're seeking counsel from the right people to begin to walk down the road of fulfilling your dream. It has been said by a controversial speaker, Jordan Peterson, and he says, start with making your bed. Every day, make your bed. And it seems ridiculous, but I think that's a way to deal with the fear of failure is start with something manageable and add on to something manageable and add on something manageable and then invite the right people into your journey.
Embracing the process over the destination.
Yeah.
We have a destination-oriented society. When I get this job, when I get this relationship, when I get this house, this whatever, then I'll be happy. And then you get there, and maybe there's a temporary spike in joy, but then it's just like, now what?
Yeah.
Because you've missed like the sweetness of the song, and that's the journey, the process. And to me, that's what winning is.
Yeah.
It's dissolving in the present, just so rooted firm in the present with humility and faith in the now versus, oh, like when this will happen, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
So for me is just embracing the process over the destination, being present in that process with great humility and faith that everything that is happening for you. To me, that's winning. What does winning mean
Yeah.
to
Derek, you nailed it. Like, I think that's right. Like, humility and faith. If you have those two things, like, maybe you add in like love is a component in there, but like humility means you're open and you allow people to speak into your life, and like you don't have to be the one who's always right. And I think faith. So for me, it's not just faith in self. It's like faith in God that He has my life in His hand and I can trust Him to walk with me down this path. I don't have to control everything. I know that there's a supernatural deity that is like engaged in my life, and I'm going to trust that He knows better than I do. And so I'm going to walk that path. And then I think to love people, where, because that deals with your selfishness, like if you're self-centered, like, so the opposite of those things would be like trust in yourself alone, or faith in yourself, pride, and what was the other word that we had? Oh, love. So it would be maybe lust, like selfishness or self-gain.
doing
If you
things?
do those things, it's going to be trouble.
Yeah.
But humility, faith, and love, I think, oh man, that'd be a glorious path for winning. I think if you make the world better, more like heaven, I think that's a win. Like
Yeah.
I I don't know if that's complete, if that thought is complete, but I think that would be a win. You see someone struggling on the side of the road, you drive by and you give them the finger and you throw something at them, doesn't make it better. You're in a washroom and there's water all over the counter and you just add a bunch more water, doesn't make it better, but actually dry your hands and give one little wipe and you're just making it a little better. That would be, I think, like a win, the
Yeah.
start of a win. Just always looking, picking up a piece of garbage. That's a little piece of making it better, a win.
Thank you. Thank you. Um, Earlier you mentioned calling someone up and just someone that's really good with people is in one of your examples, and asking for three things for positive influencing others. What are those three things for you, Donovan?
Uh-huh. Be genuine in your care for someone. Listen way more than you talk, and encourage and build up.
Um,
I think off the cuff, I think that's what it would be like. We live like everyone is critical enough of themselves They see the negatives. They don't need another person telling them everything they suck at. I think what we have a lack in is people saying the good. And you're really good at this, Derek. Seeing the good in someone, noticing these things and saying it. You notice someone, I don't know, helps at a store. They just out of the blue, they help someone. And it's just a little thing. Go to them and be like, man, like I just saw what you did. That just really encouraged me. Thank you that you're making the world better. I think this is a great way to be great with people, to help, to engage.
And it's a mindset. It's a personal mindset because there could always be a positive in every situation. And it's what lens are you choosing to view the world and view others? Is it
Oh yeah.
a lens of positivity or pessimism? Because even the fact that of them going to a job, like getting out of bed, going to work, that's a positive. Like rather like just they can just lay in bed all day and not even get up out of bed. Like so like there's as hard as it may be, like there's a positive that you can find. And it's like attuning your radar to seeing the positives in everything. Even the worst of situations, there can be positives seen.
Yeah, and I think that's totally right. And I think like it doesn't, maybe to those watching, like it doesn't neglect like helping someone. Like if someone is showing up to the workplace late 20 minutes every day, that negatively impacts them and the workplace. Like that's not a good, that's taking advantage of someone or a goodwill of a manager. But then we can come and we could blast them and be like, you suck. Well, why don't you get up? Like that doesn't help. But rather it's like, hey man, I'd like to help. Like, is there a way that I can help you get to work early? Like, what if I'd swing by your house? I'll come with a coffee in the morning. I'll show up 30 minutes early. We'll get to work 10 minutes early. We'll and have a coffee on the way. That would be a way that you can help someone in a way that's positive and encouraging instead of attacking and tearing down.
So I'm so excited to spend this next part of this conversation to really examine how you got to where you are today. Like such a loving, compassionate, positive individual, rooted firmly in your faith in God and Jesus. But how did this start? How did this manifest into your being? Yeah, you trace it back to however early you want to go, and then we'll just kind of build from there.
Yeah, I you have like distinct memories, right? Like I'll say turning point memories or like clear memories. And I was probably 6 or 7 years old. And I had a little sister who was like 3 or 4 at the time. And in my bedroom, I had my bed in the corner between like two walls, and I pulled it out and I made like a little clubhouse for the two of us to have our meetings. And we were gonna have meetings on how to make money. This was our 7 and 4 year old idea. So like, how do we make money? Well, we're gonna rake leaves for the neighbors, and we'll be willing to cut grass, and we'll pick dandelions, like all things that little kids could maybe do. And so as we're talking and putting a plan, and I'm writing down the plan of how to make money, all of a sudden I just have this thought. And I wouldn't have said it was God speaking, but looking back, I think for sure it was God. And I just looked at my sister and said, wait, I don't think we should be charging money. I think Christians are just supposed to help your neighbors. So maybe we don't charge money. Like maybe we should just help them. And my little sister was like my little tag along. She was game for anything. She's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. So we just like immediately that day got up and just went and offered to help our neighbors do things. And I think that would be like a starting point because I saw the fruit of what happened. My neighbors started calling us all the time, asking us to come help as like 7, 8, 9, 10 year olds. We have too much snow on our roof. Would you want to come help? I'm like, yeah, I'll help. Like, we want to give you money. It's like, no, no, no. Like, we just help people because we're Christians. We want to help people because we just love you. And then they would give money to my parents who would give me money. And I was like, why are they giving money? It's like, oh, they just want to encourage you. And it was like this beautiful gift that I learned as a child. Give, don't take anything in return, but it actually comes back and it blesses you in return. So early, I experienced the goodness of it. And so it became just a part of my life because I saw the good in it. And I saw it, it felt really lovely to love without return and then other people would love you without expectation. It was beautiful. So that's probably where some of the early days of where this started for me.
Okay. And then how did your faith continue to develop from those early days? And like, were you exposed to Christianity from your father, I believe it was?
Yeah, both my parents love God. I have a luxury, I guess, of as many generations back as we know. My ancestors followed God, and it was a real faith, like it was a faith of action. So I watched my parents live it out, having neighbors in. I watched my dad was a full-time teacher, and then he cared and pastored people on the side. So our home was filled with people often, filled with our neighbors, filled with anyone in need. After church, our house would be full. And so I observed a real authentic faith throughout my entire life. I went to a public school in our area, and I remember in grade 4, we were supposed to write down on a piece of paper, like, what are you going to be when you grow up? And so every little 12-year-old boy or a 10-year-old boy, we all write down the same thing, like hockey player, firefighter, policeman, right? It's like the standard. And
Yeah.
but I like wrote down on mine, I was like, I was going to be a missionary. So I wrote missionary down, and my teacher, and I had to put it up on the wall. And the teacher's like, "What's a missionary?" Because no one knew. I wasn't in school. I didn't know another Christian in my school. I said, "Oh, it's someone that flies around the world and just tells people about Jesus." She's like, "Oh, can you write that down?" I was like, "Yeah." So I wrote it down, and then all my buddies saw it, and they're like, "Oh," and they all erased like hockey player and erased these things, and they wrote down missionary. And there was something inside. Is like, oh, like people don't like, I don't know why I thought this as like a 10, 11-year-old, but people, they don't really maybe think for themselves. They just do what everyone does and what they're sort of told boys do or girls do. And I just realized, oh, you can influence people if you're willing to like ask questions or be honest. And so that began this path for me. So that was grade 4. I always had lots of friends, but we would just explore faith together and God, and I'd ask questions, and it wasn't weird to like, what's your faith journey? Do you guys believe in a God? And what God do you believe in? And tell me why. And they would ask me, and this is like my whole life was I just wanted to understand. I'm not very smart, but I'm really curious and I want to understand and I want to know people. And so that was my path, or that was my journey. And then when I was in, I guess I was 21, I got married really young. I got married at 21, and my wife and I worked at a place, and there was a deep manifestation of a demonic presence, and I'd never encountered a supernatural world like that was so in my face. And I remember with some other people that were going to help with an exorcism, and I remember the spiritual nature of it, and it was really profound. And I walked out of there and went, "Okay, God, now I've seen it was an evil world, but I've seen a manifestation outside of the realm of this earth. I'll never again doubt. I'm in for life. I'm going to follow you, and whatever you have for me, I just want to be in, and I want to help people be free, help people know you." And so that's sort of the path that led many steps to like seeing fruit and helping people. And I'll tell you one more story. I was in maybe grade 10, and in Winnipeg we have lots of snow, and so there's a path going through a schoolyard that I walked on every day in the winter. And one day I was recognizing, it's like, oh, I always step off of the path into the deep snow with my runners to let anybody else pass me, and then I get back on. I was like, how come I always have to do it? I'm not getting off the path anymore. I'm going to make people step off the path for me, being a good, tough 16-year-old. So I remember walking down the path, and there's a few times where we would hit chest to chest as someone else was coming, and boom, we'd hit, and I would just stay my ground, and they would be in the snow. And I did this for about a week, and I hated it. I hated this, like, I don't know, taking advantage, being tougher, hurting. I just made this commitment or this vow. I was like, God, I'm not doing it. I never, ever need to get special favor. I want to step out of the way for every person. I want to help anyone in need. I'm no longer ever going to put myself in that role to be like the one in charge, or the one who's tougher, or the one who's bigger than. I'm not doing it. I'll rather lay my life down 1,000 times. And these were like definitive moments in my journey of commitments to God, because I saw the fruitfulness of being kind and compassionate, gentle or generous. And I can't take credit for it. It's like my family and God just giving his grace or his revelation to understand it. And it just worked. And I was like, I'm in, like I'm in.
And on this journey with God and your faith, have you ever questioned God and your faith?
After that moment when I was working at a camp when I was 21, I've never doubted my faith. I've never questioned whether God is real or true. I've seen way too many supernatural, miraculous encounters, and I'm 100% in. I live out the Word of God the best that I can through the power of God, and the fruit or the benefit of it is just so stunning. I would never want to live a different way.
Uh, so you personally haven't questioned God and your faith, but I know for sure that many that you've counseled have.
Oh yeah.
And what advice do you have for someone right now questioning their faith, or yeah, or just questioning this conversation that we're having?
Yeah, I think that's really good. I think most people aren't convinced in their mind about something, although there's lots of really good books and resources that are out there to to challenge the mind, to look at the historical evidence of Jesus and look at the historical evidence of what is written. But I think it's like far beyond that, and I think we need to encounter him, and Jesus is okay with it. So I've had people come to my office that don't believe God exists at all. And one of the, I don't know, maybe exercises I have done with many people, and maybe this is one that people here can just do on their own, is I would just say, okay, like let's close our eyes. And can we, if you could like imagine that we're gonna hang out, you and Jesus are gonna hang out. And I'd say, close your eyes. And I'd say, Jesus, can you bring Derek to a place where if you could just have one day, the two of you, can you bring him to a place with the two of you where you would want to hang out with him alone? Would you help him to see a place where you'd like to be alone with him? And then I would ask, like, do you see something? Do you see a place? And then I would typically people are like, yeah, I have this memory, or I see this place, or there's this one young man who wasn't a follower of Jesus, but he was having like demonic attacks on his life, like crazy attacks. And I asked this question, and he says, I'm on a mountain. I'd never met him before. I'm on a mountaintop, and I'm with my car, and I'm on a mountain alone. I said, okay. I'm like, Jesus, why do you want to hang out with this young man? Why do you want to hang out with him here? What is it about the mountain? What do you want to say to him? Or what do you want him to know? And he just felt that God was saying, like, I brought you here to show you my glory, to show you who I am, to show you what I made. So this is what he's telling me. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Like, Jesus, is there anything else? Holy Spirit, is there anything else you want to say? And then he just starts to cry. And I'm like, what is happening? And he's like, Jesus just told me that I can, anytime I want, I can close my eyes and we can go sit here just in our imagination. I can sit here and I can see his grandeur. And it's a place that him and I can speak. And he wants to meet me here. And I don't need to get to the mountains to find peace. I can have peace right here if I just invite him. He doesn't know God. He wasn't walking with God. Um, and this peace overcomes him. And he met and encountered God. And that day he gave his life and said, Jesus, I want to follow you. So when you encounter him, you don't need all the answers because he has all the answers, but you don't need all the answers when you encounter him and you have a supernatural encounter with him. And that's just an exercise that I've done with thousands of people, I'm sure. And not every time I tell people, like my wife is an example. Like, for probably 2 years, she didn't know if God spoke, but she sat and she's like, Donovan, do you believe that God speaks? I'm like, yeah, babe, I totally believe. She said, okay. And she would sit every once a week, she'd sit for like 3 hours and just sit in a prayer room and have her hands open and be like, God, I desire to hear you speak. End of the 3 hours, I'd ask her, I'm like, did you hear God? She's like, no. I said, are you okay? Like, are you doubting? And she just kept asking, have you heard God speak? I said, yeah, babe, I have. I trust you. I will keep waiting until I hear God speak. And then one day she has this vision that, and I won't tell you the story now, but it was so radical. And now my wife, it's like, man, God speaks to her things that she should never know, mysteries of what are to come, foretells, gives warning, reveals things to her. It's stunning. And so I think to encounter him, ask him. He's a big God. He's a big boy. He can handle it. Like, God, I'd like to know you. God,
Uh,
I'd like to encounter you. God, I'd like to see where you are moving in my life or in this world. And I think that's a way that I would, or a way that I would encourage.
yeah, thank you. I think another way is also by getting out of the mind and into the heart, because our mind is not us. A heart, I think, is a lot more um, meaningful. Yeah,
Yeah.
get out of the mind and into the heart. What have you learned about the heart and ways to get into that heart and open it?
Yeah, I think they're married. I think the mind and heart are married. And I think too much of either can lead us astray. So one is like I can be like all feelings, all heart, but I can have like false beliefs based on, let's say, my history, right? I can believe that God is, as in if we're talking faith, that God is distant, he doesn't want relationship with me, and that he is giving me like zits on my face, and he doesn't give me a body that is easily like formed beautifully in the gym. And I could be like, have a belief that God is just judging me all the time. And if you have that belief and then you're in the heart, then all the time your heart can lead you astray. And you be like, oh, he hates me. I'm no good. I suck. On the flip side, you can know things about God. He's loving, he's kind, but you have no knowledge of him in your heart, no experience. So I think it's like we learn and we know something from God. We read the Bible, we engage with people who know him, and we move these things into action in our lives and we put them into our heart and say, God, like I hear that you are a God that is loving. I feel like you don't like me. There's a disconnect, and I need you to help me in here know that you love me, because there's a disconnect. And I think what we need to do is get our mind and our heart connected so that we're not disjointed with each other. We're not in conflict or chaos with ourselves. And I think that's the part that I see. So I think if you're too much in the head, it can lead you astray. And if you're too much in the heart, it can lead you astray. I think what we want to do is line our hearts and our minds together. And I think that's the beautiful place in which to sit.
And how can we align that? How can we find that balance between heart and mind?
So again, I believe the Bible to be true. So the way that I do is I read the Bible and it says, like, for an example, um, Philippians 4. Think of quite paraphrase, but think about things that are good, lovely, admirable, and praiseworthy, and the God of peace will be with you. So I'm like, God, my life is chaotic. It's out of control. But I read this and I take it at face value because I've seen it happen 1,000 times. So I say, God, right now, like the Bible is not real in my life because I don't believe this to be true. I have no peace in my life. But it says here to think about things that are good, lovely, admirable, and praiseworthy, and the God of peace is with me. Mind, move it into the heart. God, how do I live this out? I need to live it out. God, I'm going to go for a walk, and all I'm going to think about are the things that are good and lovely and admirable and praiseworthy. And I'm going to take a truth and put it into practice and watch the fruit. And I think this is how we align. So the Bible says, if you love me, you will obey me. We don't like the word obey in our culture, but I think this is how we engage truth into our heart, or one of the ways that we engage a truth into our heart is we live out or practice what we preach, practice what we believe, live out the things. And otherwise, you're just a salesman for a cause that you don't believe in. So
Uh,
as a preacher of the gospel or of the word of God, I have to do hard work of applying these things in my life and then teaching them once I've lived them out. Otherwise, I teach out of the mind instead of teaching out of both together.
Mhm. So I think you were mentioning you were 21 when you committed yourself to God. How did that lead you into being the lead pastor at Anchor Point Church? Fill in the gap there.
Yeah, so I was married at 21. We worked at a camp together, a Christian camp for our first year of marriage. We wanted to discern if doing full-time church work was something that we were called to do or not. I felt from young that it was, but I didn't want to just do it because my dad did it. So came back to Winnipeg after that time, and I went to university and I started working on a physical education degree. Partway through, I pulled out. We were running a youth group, and we were watching kids just come alive and know God and being changed, and we're like, oh man, this is so good. So I pulled out of university and I bought a landscaping and yard care company and owned it for 3 years. And this was to provide more time, more flexibility in my schedule that I could give more time to helping kids and families get healed and healthy and whole and mature. The business took off, and I didn't create any more time. I created more chaos. We had, I don't know, 10 or 15 staff working for us, and I was like all over the place, and I'm pretty disorganized. So I was like trying to figure out as a young guy what to do. Eventually, my father-in-law came and said, Donovan, you need to get out of the business. You know you're called into like working full-time for the kingdom of heaven, and it's time. And so I think you need to sell, and we want to help you. Anyway, one of my customers worked at a Christian school, and every Saturday we would talk. And he said to me one day, he says, Donovan, I'd like someone like you to come work in my school, someone that just cares for the spiritual lives of kids. And I like immediately knew, oh, that's my job. So I hired a manager for our business, and some months later he offered me a job at the school, and this began my journey of like every day I got to help kids and walk with kids and work with parents. That led, I was there for a few years, sold our business, and then there was a large church in a city nearby, and they had been praying. They hadn't met me, they didn't know me, but they heard about me, and as they were praying, they felt like God was saying, "You need to hire this guy to come and work with you." And there's a variety of different things, but you need to hire him. So I didn't know, and I get a bunch of phone calls, and so a bunch of kind of miraculous things happened, and we sat down and met. And he's like, Donovan, we think God has made it really clear that you're supposed to come work at the church, and so we're not looking for anyone else. We'll give you up to a year to decide if this is what God has for you. And so that year we quit our job and we went out there to work at a church for 11 years. And then there was a variety of, again, waiting on God for him to make it clear. And after 11 years, my dad had planted this church here, Anchor Point. It was called Mars Hill at the time. And the church was falling apart. It was down to about 20 people, and they didn't know if they would close their doors. And a bunch of events happened that brought us to Anchor Point, and just fell in love with it and went through some hard stuff. Like COVID was tough, and learning how to pastor, because I didn't take the formal route to become a pastor. And so learning to pastor was tough, but having vision and wanting to do things different, where the emphasis is on unity and really loving God and loving each other. And so like some people like fight against you or disagree with you. And how do you navigate that when you're someone who just wants to people please a little bit? So that began the journey. And now here we are, and there's lots of good things that are happening. And so now we're at a place where we get to help other churches and bless them and help people. And it's just a really beautiful, that's kind of the journey.
Thank you for sharing that. Brings me to this next question. And let's just picture someone in our mind, and they're at a crossroads. They're at a crossroads of should and must. And the path of should is everything they've been told, everything they've been told by society, culture, their parents, school, like you should play it safe, you should do this. But in their heart, there's a must, and maybe that must is they want to go be a missionary, or they want to write a book, or they want to move across the world and um, like tend to the rainforest or whatever that must may be, something unconventional. But they're stuck and they're stuck in the mud and they don't they don't know how to proceed. What advice would you have to this fellow hero who's having these voices? You should do this. You should do this. You should do this. But there's a deep, un, um, like deep calling within, like unavoidable, like true calling, a must that is trying to sing its song.
Yeah, that's a great question, Derek. The first thing that comes to mind is get your house in order. I have a lot of friends. I'm in my late 40s now, and we call it the midlife crisis. And people have like committed down a path. They have a career. They get to their mid 40s and like, oh my goodness, I don't even like what I do. It's terrible. And you ask them, if you could do anything, what would you do? And it's like never what, or often it's never what they're doing. But they've set up their lives in such a way that they have to live at this standard. So they can't give up their job, their engineering job, or pharmacy, or they can't give up what they're doing because their lifestyle is maxed out and they need that amount of money. So they couldn't take a pay cut to half. They couldn't risk anything. They have debt, they have leases, they have all of that stuff. And I think probably my best counsel is, can you get your house in order? Like look and be like, okay, what can I reduce? I want to do a dream, but you can't just leave here, go across the world when you have, let's say, a mortgage and car payments and all that stuff. Get your house in order. It's like, okay, I have a dream. I have a must. I need to go work in the rainforest. What am I going to do? Okay, well, I got to get rid of the debts that we have here. So I'm going to scale back my life. I'm going to move into a place that's simple. I'm going to get all of these things in order so that if the opportunity comes to do it, I can. But I think what happens is people often tell you the shoulds, or culture says the shoulds, because there is a responsibility. And sometimes the must, you can't do it because you have a responsibility that you've created that you have to deal with. So I think, how do you get your life in order so that you can? So for an example, for me, I believe I'm supposed to help plant churches in Europe as well. I don't know anyone in Europe. I don't really know how that works. But all of a sudden, I like mentioned to a couple people, and an opportunity opens up, and there's a connection, and there's a relationship. And I just begin in my extra time to meet with these people, to care for these ones here. And all of a sudden, before you know it, a couple of years pass, and I'm leaving in October to go to Europe. And I have like 10 places, 8 places maybe, that I'm going to go work with people over the years. It's a must that I didn't know how to get there. Everyone would say that's kind of crazy, but I know that this is something I'm supposed to do at some point. And so you get your house in order. You begin, for me, I begin to pray and sort through and get my life in order so that I can. And that means I need to get my church in order, the church that I'm required. I need to have this in order so that I can leave. And it's like it grows and it functions and it still gets people healthy. I needed to get that in order before I could go and do my must.
Beautiful. I have a couple more questions. This next one is regarding service, and the importance of service. What have you learned about the importance of service, and how have you learned about how to be a best of service to others?
I think sometimes we guilt people into serving and say, you're better if you serve, and you are better if you serve, but it's way better if it comes out of your heart. And so I think a question to ask is like, why do I serve and for what purpose? And I think I would say to people, it's like, okay, you want to serve, but like, where do you want to grow in your life? So what's getting your house in order again? So where do you want to grow? Do you want to grow in being able to communicate things about, let's say in my context, the Bible? Well, then maybe what you want to do is you want to go and volunteer or serve with children who are non-judgmental. They're going to come back week in, week out, and you're going to learn how to share truths about the Bible to children because you want to grow in that area. Maybe you want to grow and becoming an instructor for yoga again. You can go take courses. Maybe you don't have money. Maybe then your service is you go and you talk to a yoga studio and you say, listen, can I come in 30 minutes early to clean everything, to serve, to clean everything in this area? And then can I sit in and have a free yoga lesson? Because I would like to learn, but I don't want to do it for free. I want to do it. That would be like you're serving with a purpose. You're serving to grow in another area. Maybe you have a friend that you want to have more time with. And so you say, why don't the two of us, why don't we serve together so we can learn like more of ourselves beyond just you telling me about yourself, Derek, and me telling you about myself. Let's go serve together because we're going to learn and grow together. And I think, again, psychology says that when we serve, we stop focusing on ourselves so much, which is great. I think service can look like when you're choosing where to serve, where do you want to grow? What are areas maybe of weakness? What are areas that you want to develop in your life? Get your house in order. And I think service is a beautiful way in which to do that. It's like taking the things from the mind to the heart. It's like, oh, I want to care for the homeless. Go serve the homeless. Learn how to love them and care for them and not judge them. Do that. That would be a beautiful thing. I want to learn how to be generous. Serve in that capacity. Set aside money in your budget. Set aside $50 or $100 a month. And all that money's for is to give away to someone and serve in that capacity.
Uh-huh. And for someone listening and they're thinking like, well, I don't know where to serve. I don't know how to serve. How can they start? How can they get clearer on that?
Yeah, I think to serve it, like I think if you don't know, just begin serving somewhere. So again, start with the simplest, like serve by in your workplace, show up at work 25 minutes early, walk around the outside of the building and just pick up garbage for 10 minutes beforehand, and then go inside the building, serve that way. Serve by come in, look for the needs of what's going on. And it's like, don't come into work 10 minutes late, come in 30 minutes early. You're frustrated that I think often serving, if it can come out of like where you see a need, but it could be like where you're bitter, like you come into work and you wish that someone had made coffee. Make coffee, but come in early, make coffee, set the atmosphere, and you create that. Like, where do you have an annoyance? Like you think drivers are terrible. Leave 20 minutes early and make it your mission when you drive to let every person in who needs in, not to be angry, make it better for everyone. Take an annoyance, make it into a serving. So you move it from your head to your heart and begin somewhere with what you have.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. That's incredible advice. And it doesn't have to be huge things as you're exemplifying. Small things, and these small things end up creating big change, not only for others, but most importantly for yourself.
For sure. For sure.
So much wisdom shared, Donovan. I feel really grateful for this conversation. I have one last question that I
Sure.
asked guest, and I'll ask this to you. You've shared so much, um, but through all the highs and lows that is this hero's journey, what would you say has been the greatest life lesson you've learned on your path that you feel called in this moment to share with everyone tuning in?
Man, it sort of is going to sound a little cliche, but I believe this like through and through at the very core. Like God is love and he loves us really deeply and he knows the path that is absolutely best and it's invigorating. It's like addicting to walk with God because you get to watch him at work and you're just kind of following and walking with him. So I would say beyond everything for me, it's like to put my full faith and trust in him and actually believing this, but putting my trust in him because he's just made my life remarkable. And I've tried on my own. I've done things on my own. I've not consulted him. I've not asked him. But when I've like actually relinquished and I put my full trust in him, my world is different and the world is open and I just see it in a different lens. Like there's people that are like doomsdayers and I'm like, are you kidding? I think we're living in the best time in history. I see all these opportunities of people that are hungry like for relationship and to know God and people want to participate to make the world better. Stop thinking of everything like this. But yeah, I have to work to have the mind of God. And that means I have to sit with him and spend time with him and ask him. But it's like every 10 minutes that you get in intentionality with God, for me, it's like it saves me hours of heartache. It's like I try to open a door and push through and think I know best. Then I wait on him, and then he opens a door and he sets a path. And it's like, oh, that was that was way easier. But I actually feel I've felt lots. I have to do it. I have to open the door. I have to create it. And when I learned to like just trust him, be like, God, I'm in. I'm going to follow your path. I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to spend time with you. That for me has been the life changer. And that would be the thread throughout my entire life. And yeah, I would love people to know him. This is why I've given my whole life to this because it's transformative for me. It's transformed me. It's transformed my family. Um, and that's my everything. And I would give up everything for that cause. I'd sacrifice anything for people to know him like that.
For someone listening and they're wanting to get to know God more, where can they start? Where can they find you? Where can you send these people?
Yeah, like you can for sure message me for sure, or contact me through you. That's great. Depending where you are, like depends like which city or what place. If people want to reach out, Donavan at your anchor point is it or youranchorpoint.com online, and you can message that way. And you want to explore it, like I'm open to it. I have a pretty full schedule, but I love it and I love to help people. So myself or someone else, or we'll try to set you up with people that are really loving in a community you're in. But you can probably look and you probably already know like someone who's like you look at the energy that they have, or it's like there's something about them that's intriguing, something about them that is like so loving. Go and ask them. But again, I'm open. Donovan at your anchor point or youranchorpoint.com or connect with you and run that road. And for sure.
Amazing, amazing. To close every conversation, we bring our fist in, a digital fist bump, a choice to step into the winner circle. Boom. Thank you
Love
so
it.
much. I'm excited to see you at church on Sunday and continue my journey with Anchor Point, with Jesus, and yourself, Donovan.
Derek, you're fantastic. I've really appreciated getting to know you. And thanks for the chance to hang out in here and chat.
Beautiful. Thank you. And that's a wrap on today's conversation.